The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I see that we have quite a few attendees that are already signed on. That's wonderful. Welcome. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. If you have not yet done so, you may take a look at the handout section and you will see the LOI that was posted on the TEA website. But if you would like to have that in front of you, you should be able to find that in the handout section, as well as a copy of today's presentation. So in these couple of minutes, if you actually want to take some time and print them out and have them in front of you, please feel free to do so. If not, hopefully they'll be helpful for you to reference in the future. All right, hello everyone and welcome. It is 2 o'clock on the dot. With that said, we'll give a couple of our friends a couple extra moments to get signed in and situated before we really get started with the meat of the content. For those of you that recently joined us, if you go ahead and click on that handout tab, you'll be able to find both the LOI as well as the posted slide deck for today's presentation. If you'd like to take a moment or so to print that, please feel free to print and have a hard copy in front of you. That would be great. For those of you that also find yourself to be extraordinarily busy today, please feel free to jump off. This webinar is being recorded. It will be posted to the TEA website within the next couple of days. It will also be emailed out to all participants that are on the webinar list. And just as a reminder, you have another week until January 18th to submit questions. When you submit questions, we'll be able to post those responses to you by January 25th, and you'll find the responses posted on the TEA website. All right, we will go ahead and get started in the interest of respecting everybody's time. As I've now said, I think for the umpteenth time, please do feel free to refer to the handout section on the control panel. Within the handout section, you will see both a copy of the LOI as well as a copy of this presentation. If you would like to take a minute to print it or just have it open on your computer, please feel free to do so. If not, they will be available for you at the end of the webinar. In addition to having these tools for you, we are also recording the webinar. The recording will be posted on the TEA website within the next couple of days, so feel free to review that at your leisure or even share the link with additional members of your team that might find it beneficial to join. With that said, I am going to assume that many of you have already oriented yourself with the LOI, and so I am going to be sticking mostly to information that is additional or can provide more clarity to the content in the LOI. Similarly, if we see questions that are coming through that have responses that are in the LOI, I'm going to refrain from responding to them here as those answers will be very clearly found in the LOI. And if those questions are still persistent, then we will include those questions in the response that we provide on January 25th. All right, with that, we'll get started. First of all, just a couple of housekeeping items. One, I have a comment here that it sounds like I'm a little bit far away from the phone. I would like to address that we are undergoing some construction here around TEA, and so if you hear sporadic noises or I'm sounding a little bit faint, it's more or less just to try to mitigate the additional white noise that could be coming through. What I'll also say too is that in terms of questions, you'll see that there's a question section on your control panel. Please do feel free to submit questions there. I might make a recommendation that you draft questions, whether it be in an email or on a Word document. That way, if it's something that's answered by the end of the webinar, then no need to ask it. And if it's something that you would like to submit, then your email's already teed up and ready to go to the Reading Initiative's email address so that we can include it in the FAQ. Periodically, as we're going through the webinar, I will review some of the questions and see if there is information that's really pertinent to the group. And we'll pause for questions at different sections within the webinar. As previously mentioned, responses will be posted on January 25th on the TEA website. So please do rest assured that if, for instance, your question is not answered today, that we are collecting those questions, putting them together in an FAQ, and that will be posted on the 25th. Just as a reminder, questions are able to be submitted starting today, and the opportunity to submit questions regarding the LOI will close next Friday on the 18th. So I just want to put that on your radar that you know exactly when it'll be that you need to submit those questions by. After the 18th, we are not able to entertain any more questions as it could potentially give an unfair advantage to certain individuals. And then finally, as mentioned as well, we are recording the webinar. So you'll be able to share that with additional members of your team. If there's somebody who missed the webinar today or just would like a refresher, that link will be posted on the TEA website and will also be shared with any individual who registered for the webinar. I'll give you a moment to review the agenda and objectives. And while you're reviewing the agenda and objectives, I'll take a moment to welcome you and also introduce myself and one of my colleagues that's also working on Reading Academies. So first of all, welcome and thank you so very much for your interest in Reading Academies and in the READ grant in particular. My name is Katie Houtland and I'm the Division Director for Elementary, Middle, and State Programs, which also includes the statewide Reading Initiative. I have been a third grade teacher, a fifth grade teacher here in Austin. I've been an assistant principal. I've worked on curriculum teams. And so I come with a variety of experiences to draw from in helping to drive this very important work forward. Along with me, we have a panelist or my colleague, Rebecca Harris, and she'll take a moment to introduce herself as well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to electronically meet with us and learn about the Reading Academies. My name is Rebecca Harris, and I am a program specialist here at TEA, working specifically on the Reading Initiative. In the past, I have been both an elementary classroom teacher as well as a collegiate instructor. I have served districts as a literacy coach and a literacy coordinator, and I am so excited to take the knowledge that I've learned over the years and apply it in academies in a way that supports teacher efficacy and student outcomes in your district. So again, thank you for being here.
Excellent, thank you, Rebecca. It looks as though there still might be a little bit of an issue with sound. I'm very, very sorry about that. At this point, I'm not entirely sure exactly how we might be able to remedy. Yeah, please just keep, if you wouldn't mind, just keep adding a couple of questions if the recording, or I guess if sound is really still a significant issue, or if you manage to find a way around it, then hurrah, thank you very much for finding your solution. I'm very sorry if it's still difficult to hear. What we'll do is we'll start with just a brief overview of Reading Academies, especially as there have been significant changes. Before we dive in, one thing that I would let you know is that in TEA we've engaged with a number of stakeholders, and the stakeholders have provided tremendous feedback. Stakeholders have included ESC core group members, teachers, specific individuals who have worked on the reading initiative before. I was able to attend a Reading Academy myself this past summer, and so by taking a look at participant feedback and all of these different inputs from different stakeholders, we really worked hard to better meet the needs of teachers. What we know and understand is that academies in the past have felt very theoretical and very much like it is a college course or something that was really great in theory, but very hard to practically apply to the classroom. And it is for these reasons that we are trying very hard to better meet the needs of teachers and really support their opportunity in providing high quality reading instruction for their kiddos. In walking through the changes with you, we'll be able to see just exactly how it is that we've revisioned the academies. Now, what hasn't changed is that Reading Academies are established through statute, both as the Literacy Achievement Academy, serving kindergarten through third grade teachers, and the Reading to Learn Academy, serving fourth and fifth grade teachers. For the context of this grant, we are combining both of these different academies into one general umbrella, the Reading Academies. The reason why we're doing this is to provide greater opportunity for there to be vertical alignment and vertical collaboration, not only with teachers in one grade level, but teachers across various grade levels. We know how important it is to understand the development of literacy across the multiple ages of students that we're working with, as well as a multiple set of needs. Ultimately, as previously mentioned, the goal has also not changed, is that we are really working to help ensure teachers have the support that they need to really understand high quality instructional practice and then incorporate that into their own practice and in their own classroom. In the past, 20 ESCs have operated the Reading Academies, and going into summer 2019, what we're looking for is what we're calling 30 cohorts, 30 communities of teachers that can be established by ESCs, by LEAs, and LEA means local education agency or school district. So for some people that have been wondering what an LEA is a school district and or nonprofit organizations. It may be that one ESC would like to organize a cohort, and it could also be that maybe two school districts would like to organize a cohort and apply for the READ grant together. That is perfectly acceptable and appropriate to collaborate with others in your community to do this work together. In the past, academies have taken place over the course of 3 days and roughly 24 hours. Moving into summer 2019, and actually the academic year 2019, there will be over 100 hours and at least 13 days during the summer and throughout the school year. Not only will there be development and training sessions, but there will also be instructional coaching. Each cohort will have a literacy coach that will not only be responsible for the professional development sessions, but will also be responsible for providing one-on-one coaching and feedback cycles for participating teachers. In the past, participants have been largely K-5 teachers. Starting in the summer of 2019, we will have teachers, school leaders, district level leaders, as well as any interested ESC representation. What we're hoping to do is not only support teachers themselves, but support those who support our literacy teachers. School leaders, district leaders, and ESC representatives will not have the same expectation for participation, but there will be a reduced expectation to ensure that our instructional leaders have just as much literacy content as our teachers. And then finally, in the past, Reading Academies have been established per grade level. Moving forward, we're going to have a differentiated and much more fluid grouping, meaning that we're going to be looking more at the content and then identifying teachers that are appropriate to participate in that content. Those are just some of the changes that are coming forward. What we'll do right now is I'm looking at a couple of questions and it still appears as though I might be muffled. I'm so sorry right now. I have a couple of comments where it sounds like I'm okay and a couple of comments where it sounds like I am not quite clear. Just keep giving feedback if it sounds like that I'm still a bit muffled or to the point where you are not able to comprehend what I'm communicating. With that, we will shift to the grant details and timeline. And so we'll jump more specifically now into the READ grant opportunity. What I'd like to mention, first of all, is that with the READ grant opportunity, the grant really is focused on the establishment of these groups. And so if you are looking to be a READ grantee, your real sole function is to ensure that we have the necessary teachers, that we have the instructional coach in place, and that logistically there are all the required resources and materials that are needed in order for an effective development over the course of the year. If you don't have the LOI next to you or pulled up on your computer, please feel free to open that now. Great. I'm getting a little bit more feedback that we can comprehend hopefully the words and that hopefully there's no loss in understanding what we're sharing. As we dive into the grant details and timeline, I just want to reiterate that you are more than welcome to submit questions. If it is something that is already involved or included in the LOI, I will likely refrain from responding to that question now, as everybody should have access to that information. But if it is a persistent question, then I will most certainly include the response in the frequently asked questions document that will be released on January 25th. The READ grantee is really responsible for three main tasks. And you'll see this on page 3 of your LOI document, as well as on page 4, which will provide more specificity in exactly what those responsibilities include. The first task is to convene a cohort of reading teachers. The second task is to provide that coaching support, which means identifying that literacy coach whose full and complete role is to support Reading Academies. And then finally, provide the logistic support for the cohort. There is one section that I would like to read from the LOI, as I hope it really encapsulates a lot of the purpose, intention, and goals behind the Reading Academies. If you'd like to read along, I'm reading from page 3. The revamped academies focus on the fundamentals of reading instruction with ample opportunity for teacher practice throughout the year. These updated academies provide professional development on the best instructional practices for teaching literacy. What I'd like to mention here is that in this first year, in 2019 in particular, we're going to be focusing on the new TEKS. So we will be especially taking the new TEKS that have been unveiled and will be rolling out in the coming year, and we will specifically focus on unpacking the new TEKS, understanding the new TEKS, and then moving into what does it look like to really teach the rigor level and the expectation level of the TEKS in the classroom. I just want to provide that caveat, as I think it is also another really wonderful opportunity for teachers to fully understand what the new TEKS mean and really the essence and heart and intention that was put into designing them. Academies will be structured as an engaging blended learning model that includes digital and in-person content delivery over a period of 15 months, along with one-on-one instructional coaching. A bit of feedback that we received that is very important for me to mention is that we do not want the experience of teachers in participating in the Reading Academies to feel like it is a sit and get. It is not going to be sit and get. It is really going to be focused about, one, developing a foundational understanding with a priority on practical application as it applies to the classroom. Each participant will be part of a smaller cohort with a dedicated literacy coach. These coaches will be literacy experts who will both lead training sessions and serve as an instructional coach. This will allow participants to build relationships with each other and their coach, who will observe and provide targeted feedback. Each cohort will contain approximately 60 K-5 teachers. Since we've talked a little bit about what READ grantees will be doing, I want to make very clear what it is that READ grantees will not be doing. READ grantees will not be responsible for developing Academies content. You will not be responsible for managing teachers' stipends. And you will not be responsible for any of the logistics or processing any of the travel for the summer training. All of that will be locally assigned to an ESC to manage that on behalf of all grantees in the state. If we get into the specifics of the 30 cohorts, hopefully what you'll see here is it's broken down a little bit in terms of how you might want to go about comprising your cohort. In terms of geography, each cohort can be made of one school district or many school districts. It's really established to meet the needs of the local community and meet the needs of local context. We are requesting for there to be 15 or fewer campuses and at least 2 teachers per campus. The reason for this is that we want to ensure that our literacy coach is able to effectively and efficiently visit campuses as well as observe teachers. But really, ultimately, our goal is to create literacy communities and teachers that have an opportunity to collaborate with one another on the same campus or within the same local context. Having a scope that is too big will limit the opportunity for teachers to be able to collaborate with one another, and will also make it more difficult for the literacy coach to support across multiple campuses. I would like to mention here that there is another difference from the previous academies. Whereas in previous academies, we are not able to share content that was developed, it is our intent that the content that is developed in these academies is widely shared. With that, I would really recommend that you think strategically about the teachers that you would like to attend. Of course, the content is wonderful for teachers who need support and understanding best practice in literacy instruction, but it could also be very valuable to send your more seasoned teachers, teachers who perhaps are grade level chairs, teachers who perhaps run professional learning communities. The reason being is that they'll be able to more effectively and efficiently bring back content and share it with additional teachers on their campus. I want to highlight that because I think it is a wonderful opportunity to think about how to scale and how to expand the impact of the content that we share during Reading Academies. Each cohort will have one instructional or literacy coach. The grantee will be able to nominate and select their literacy coach. TEA will need to approve and review all interview material. This literacy coach will lead the training sessions in the summer, as well as throughout the course of the academic year, and will serve as that instructional coach for the teachers participating. As a reminder, with almost any program coming out of the agency, it cannot supplant, and this funding cannot supplant currently held positions, and does need to promote its own function for the sake and purpose of the READ grant. And then finally, each of the cohorts will contain 60 K-5 teachers. The reason why we need to have approximately 36 kindergarten through 3rd grade teachers and approximately 24 4th through 5th grade teachers is because of statute. And based on the funding source that we were receiving, we need to maintain that same balance. Additionally, and as previously mentioned, we are incorporating instructional leadership both from at the campus level as well as from the district level. This is to help support the implementation of the learned content into the classroom with more feedback and more frequent conversations in terms of what it looks like to execute on best practices really efficiently and effectively in the classroom. We'll go task by task with a little bit of further information and a little bit more clarity. Some of this will be redundant and repetitive, and so I'm going to focus my time mostly on information that could be new. I'd like to speak to the 3rd bullet, which means that we're ensuring commitments of at least one campus and one district administrator. What you'll notice in the attachment section of your LOI is a very clear document so that we are able to ensure that both the campus and the district are in support of participation in the Reading Academies. If there are 5 campuses that are engaging in your cohort, we will need assigned commitment from one campus leader from each of those 5 campuses. Same thing for the district. If your cohort includes 3 different districts, then we'll need to have assigned commitment from an individual within each of those districts. And those commitments are due at the time of application. What is not due at the time of application is a list of your specific teachers. We do not expect that you'll have identified your 60 teachers by the 1st of March. What we do need to see at the time of application is your process and your method for how you will identify those teachers. This could also be a really great opportunity for you to include exactly the balance of maybe more novice teachers as well as teachers who you identify as teachers capable of bringing content back and sharing with their peers. If you take a look at bullet 4, at least 50% of participating campuses and districts must serve economically disadvantaged students. The reason why this is 50% and why this expectation exists is because it is in statute and we do not have the ability to amend this ratio. And then finally, the last bullet, it is going to be the role of the grantee to maintain and ensure at least 90% retention of teachers throughout the course of the year. What that means is that if teachers are having a poor experience, that grantees are able to communicate that to us at TEA so that we can ensure that we're providing high quality program that is beneficial to teachers. We also want to ensure that money that the state is spending is going to have a very large impact in as many classrooms as possible. If we take a look at the second task, most of this is pretty self-explanatory. The one exception that I would like to make is just adding more clarity here around the approval of literacy coaches required. If you refer to the LOI, you will have noticed that you may nominate 1 and up to 5 literacy coaches. It is expected that at the time of application that you have put forth the effort to identify who that could be and include any interview information so that we at TEA are able to identify whether or not that literacy coach is going to be a great fit, not only for your local context, which is part of your selection, but also being a really strong fit with us here at TEA. We will be training these literacy coaches in May to ensure that they have all the necessary content and adult learning theory that they need to be effective in your local context. So this really is a dual selection process. We are relying on you to identify and supply us with individuals who you feel like would be really well received and has gained trust among the teachers and educators in your local community. And then on our end, because we are going to be ultimately working with literacy coaches to ensure that they are providing high quality feedback and coaching, we also would like to have an opportunity to participate in the selection process. What you'll notice too in the second bullet is that because there are 60 teachers, we know that the literacy coach will have a challenging time visiting classrooms really frequently. We are envisioning a mix of virtual video submissions to the instructional coach, as well as the instructional coach having the capacity to help train and develop instructional leaders on each campus and within each district to provide additional ongoing coaching. That said, it is expected that the literacy coach is able to offer feedback, whether it be virtually or in person, at least 6 times over the course of the year. Moving on to task 3. What I'd like to point out too is when I mentioned that there were going to be over 100 hours and 13 days of training and development, we know that there will be roughly 4 days of training over the course of the summer, and then there will be 2 days of training that take place in October, January, and March. We are very, very welcome and open to discussing exactly what that schedule looks like, which means that if you have a schedule that you would propose again based on your local community needs, then we are happy to approve the schedule that you present to us. It could be that Saturdays are the most effective days to bring teachers together. It could be that you pull teachers together virtually on one Saturday and then have it in person on the following Saturday. We really are willing to be as flexible as we can, understanding that there are very diverse needs across the state. And again, some of the other expectations here is really just one, to help ensure that the instructional coach is as effective as possible, as well as ensuring that our participants are able to get the feedback and support that they need as well. If we take a look at the intended process for establishing cohorts, where you see we are in coordinate and identify, that's really what should be taking place over the course of January and February. So what we envision is over the course of the next 6 weeks, what you're doing is really partnering with other districts, other schools, other ESCs that are in your region and make sense to partner with, and having those discussions. What do we want this to look like? Who wants to apply for the grant? How many opportunities do we want to establish a cohort? You're also taking the opportunity to identify who would you like that literacy coach to be. And you're ensuring that there is commitment from all participating campuses and districts. March 1st is the deadline for applying, and so at that point you'll be able to submit all required documents. And then hopefully by the end of March, we will be able to identify award grantees that they have been awarded the grant, and then begin preparations for the summer. One thing that I will mention here is that you are able to apply for more than one grant. So for instance, if you are in an ESC and there's a very high demand for participation, it could be that one ESC manages 2 or potentially even 3 cohorts. Again, we want to provide as much flexibility as possible. So where demand exists within the state, we would like to ensure that we are being flexible to support the demands being met. If we take a look at budget, part of the application requirement is that you are providing us with a realistic budget for exactly what these amounts would entail. Because of the vast difference across the state, whether it be competition or just demand or cost of living, we are envisioning that the instructional coach salary, including benefits, package would be roughly $75,000 to $100,000. Additionally, up to $130,000 would be for things such as literacy coach travel, space for the training that occurs in October, January, and March. Should there be any necessity for printed materials, any of those logistical needs are also met in this $130,000 bucket. And then finally, each teacher participant will be awarded $1,500 for participating. Unfortunately, school leaders, district leaders are not qualified to receive that amount because in statute it is strictly earmarked for teachers. In terms of allowable use of funds, I imagine that this might be where a lot of specificity and questions might come up. Again, what I would recommend is during this slide, if you've got questions already, please feel free to jot that down in an email. Because of the nature of funding responses, it is necessary for us to have, on TEA side, to have a very articulate and very clear response. So responses to any allowable use of funds questions will be available on the 25th, but will not be covered right now during the webinar. Again, as you'll see, that the literacy coach includes both salary and benefits. It also means that for the in-state travel expenses, bullet 3, that again, the grantees will not be responsible for paying for teacher travel during the summer. It is an allowable use of funds over the course of the academic year to pay for participant travel, but it is not needed over the course of the summer. And then similarly, in bullet number 5, securing a space to conduct the ongoing development sessions. Again, you will not need to use the money to secure space over the summer. You will only need to use those funds to secure spaces for October, January, and March. The final thing that I've mentioned before, but of course can say again, is that all funds must supplement and cannot supplant already existing positions or we'll say activities. I had a request to go back to slide 15. I will go back very briefly. Again, as mentioned, if you go to the handout section in the control panel, you'll see both a copy of this webinar as well as a copy of the LOI. And before we move on to questions, or an opportunity for me to review questions that have been posted thus far, I just would like to take a moment to review our dates and just highlight a couple of things. First of all, please feel free to use that reading initiatives at tea.texas.gov website, email address, not only for questions, but this is also the email address that you will use when submitting your application on March 1st. It will also be an active email address over the course of Academies and throughout the next couple of years in terms of addressing anything that could be reading initiative related. On January 25th, responses to any unanswered questions will be posted on the TEA webpage. So exactly where you, for instance, saw information about the webinar or where you received information about the LOI, on that same page is where you'll be able to find not only the webinar, but also the response to questions that have been posted. What is completely optional, but exceedingly helpful in us planning is if you are able to complete a letter of intent or your notice of intent. It's a Qualtrics survey. It should not take much time at all to complete. And really the only the information that we glean from this that's helpful for us is to plan exactly how many evaluators we need in evaluating applications. It allows us to identify staffing as well as time and things like that. It is completely optional. If you do not submit a notice of intent, no worries, you are still permitted to apply. It is just something that's very helpful for us at TEA in planning. And then finally, the big date is March 1st. That's when applications are due to the Reading Initiative's email address by 5 o'clock. And again, it is our goal and intent that we are able to evaluate applications and turn around responses to applicants pretty quickly. We'll say that over the course of March and April that we're going to be evaluating and negotiating, and then the final NOGAs are issued in May. Pre-award costs, though, will be able to be dated back into March and even April, although there should be absolutely no cost necessary at that point. With that, I do want to call attention to your LOI packet and just want to make sure that you are familiar and aware of the different attachments that are included. If you take a look at the attachment section beginning on page 11 of your LOI, you'll see, first of all, the notice of intent to submit a letter of interest for the READ grant. You'll notice the school and district leadership commitment form that I previously mentioned. You'll also see an example of a template for how you could capture, or if you are ready to start identifying teacher participants. Again, on page 14, attachment 3, the participant template is not required. What is required is the district name, the campus name, campus ID number, and percent of economically disadvantaged students. It is perfectly fine and acceptable if you have not yet identified the teachers as of March 1st. Again, in that instance where teachers are not yet identified, then you will want to include a description of how it is that you will make that decision and how it is that you will ensure that the necessary requirements for teacher participants are met. If we take a look at attachment 4, then you'll see the questions that you will need to respond to. And again, the idea is that you're able to compile all of these required documents into one email and submit them to the Reading Initiative's email address. Response to those questions can be in a Word document or however you see fit. If it's a PowerPoint presentation, we are definitely open to presentation style, but just make sure that it contains all the required information. You will also see the scoring overview, as well as an actual scoring rubric that our evaluators will be using when scoring applications. And then finally, the last attachment is just your literacy coach hiring tools and exactly what it is that we're looking for and requirements for the literacy coaches. And with that, what I will do now is I will just start to take a look at some of the questions that are posted, and then what we are able to get to today, we will get to today. And then what we are not able to get to today, those responses will be posted in the FAQ on the 25th. One question is summer travel for cohort members part of the grant award amount? It is not. That is coming from a separate source. the grantees will not need to pay for that. So again, when you're taking a look at summer travel for teachers, that will be reimbursed. Teachers will not be required to pay for that amount, nor will districts or campuses. There is a separate grant that we are running with Region 13 who will be responsible for reimbursing summer travel for participants, as well as coordinating the logistics of the summer summits. For literacy coaches, it is recommended that you have a couple of candidates that are identified by March 1st. It is perfectly fine and okay if you say we are not yet sure exactly who it will be. We have started the process and we have not yet ironed out or identified the exact candidate that we're looking for. What will be required is that you're able to provide us with as much context around who it is you're looking for, or a reason why maybe you don't have that literacy coach identified just yet. What I do want to say here is that if you are having a difficult time identifying your literacy coach, that might be something to really expand and start working with the larger group as a whole, because I know that there are pockets of literacy coaches that exist in some areas, and there have been individuals that have participated, for instance, in excellence teams in different areas throughout the state that are really high quality candidates for this function in particular. In terms of a page limit for the application questions, there is some guidance if you take a look at the attachment section. We don't want to limit anybody from providing more than enough information, but we certainly do, for the sake of being able to effectively and efficiently evaluate. Being succinct is appreciated, but also please do take your time and please do ensure that you are providing us with all the necessary information that you would like to in order to complete a competitive application. On slide 10, there's a question about attachment 4 in terms of application questions. Do we answer the questions in the same page, or do we have an additional document? It is completely up to you. If it is easier for you to have everything in one Word document or have it in one kind of consolidated location, please feel free to do that. If you want to send them as separate attachments as they're outlined in the LOI, please feel free to do that as well. My personal preference would be if everything were to be submitted in one concrete document. That would make it easier for us to share with evaluators. However, it is completely your preference and how you would like to share that information. Again, if you take a look at the LOI, all the requirements are stated in the attachment section, starting, I believe, on page 11. So if you take a look at page 11, you'll have an idea of all the necessary forms, as well as all the questions that will need to be responded to. All of those components are going to be due on March 1st. There's a question about if ESC is the coordinating entity or if there are multiple ESCs. So, for instance, if two ESCs wanted to come together to run a grant or run a cohort, then it means that just whomever it is that is the grantee for this, they would be responsible for planning the ongoing academic year training. So in terms of the ESC that is planning the summer training, Region 13 is going to be coordinating 5 different geographically dispersed summer summits. All of the content in the 5 summer summits will be exactly the same. and we have one region that's coordinating, again, both the reimbursement for travel as well as logistically identifying those locations. And we will be communicating out exactly what that information is once we have our grantees and know exactly where geographically dispersed across the state they are. Of course, what that means now is that as a grantee for the READ grant, no READ grantee will need to logistically plan anything over the course of the summer other than ensuring that your teachers and school district ESC leaders are there and attending. Thank you all very much for your questions. Just in reviewing some of them as well, I'm seeing many that are about allowable use of funds, which is wonderful. And as previously mentioned, I will definitely be sure to respond to those in our FAQ that will be released on the 25th. What I can say is that because one of the tasks is to logistically support the instructional coach, if there are necessary requirements such as location services or desk space or office space, that is certainly an allowable use of funds, especially as we want to ensure that the literacy coach has what they need to effectively support teachers and school leaders. Yes, there will, in terms of the materials cost or the budget that you will want to present when applying for the grant, there of course are going to be small administrative or indirect costs that are associated with managing the grant. It is typical that those fees should not exceed 8%. And so as you are proposing your budget, you'll want to specifically identify exactly what portion you are going to be requesting for indirect costs. This grant is only for 2019 and 2020 school year. It is part of our much longer vision in terms of the revamped and revised reading academies. That being said, the district or grantee will not need to sustain the coach in the following years. If, for instance, there is a region that would like to apply again, it is likely that we would have a very similar timeline. And so it is intended and likely that you should have ample time in, say, 2020, 2021, and so on, to be able to identify whether or not that literacy coach would have additional opportunities to serve in that capacity over the course of multiple years. But it absolutely would not be on the district ESC or nonprofit to sustain that employment beyond the scope of the 2019-2020 academies. I believe that this was covered in the session, but I'll go ahead and address it now as well. TEA is developing the content for the session, so it will never be the responsibility of the cohort convener or for the grantee to develop any content. What we are looking for is that in our relationship with the literacy coaches, we also want to keep space, excuse me, for there to be flexibility and meet the differentiated needs that could come up for a cohort. So TEA will be managing not only the development of the summer content, most of the content throughout the course of the year, and then we will be working with specific literacy coaches placed in with each cohort to develop differentiated programming, but all of that will be orchestrated by TEA. And it is correct that grantees are not responsible for paying teacher stipends. Those teacher stipends are also not a part of the award amount. So when you take a look at the award amount that would not exceed $230,000, none of the stipends are coming from that amount. Teacher stipends are coming from a different grant that we have with Region 13. Region 13 will be able to will not only reimburse for summer travel, but will also be responsible for payment of teacher stipends. Retired educators can certainly be hired as a literacy coach. I would encourage you to use experts, especially trusted experts in your community, to serve as literacy coaches. Please do feel free to think flexibly about that candidate pool. If you're wondering about whether or not certain individuals would be a strong fit for the literacy coach role, you will want to review the rubric that we've included in the attachment section. Attachment 6 includes the literacy coach hiring tools, as well as a rubric for exactly what we're looking for. You'll also see that experience teaching literacy is part of the screening tool. In terms of literacy coaches per campus, there's only one literacy coach per cohort. So if, for instance, you identified 5 campuses that you would like to be a part of the cohort, you would have one literacy coach that would serve those 5 campuses. Across those 5 campuses, you would then have 60 teachers. So ideally, if you've got 5 campuses, then you would have, well more than 2 teachers per campus, which means that that literacy coach would be able to spend really effective and efficient time at each of those 5 campuses, visiting multiple teachers at a time. In terms of what to submit for the LOI, you do not need to submit any of the precursor project requirements or anything like that from the LOI. If you take a look just at the attachment section and want to begin looking at the attachment for the application questions, so long as you address all of those 5 different sections in the application questions, as well as the required attachments, you will be completely fine. You do not need to include any of the additional LOI information. In terms of the content development, if the cohort receives content and curriculum in the first year, will they have new curriculum in the next year, or is their cohort work over? To give you a little bit of insight in what we are planning in the long term, is that what we are doing is we are not only helping teachers in their classrooms in terms of like just literacy support and strong foundational literacy practice for our students, but that we're also creating a mechanism where perhaps more senior teachers or teachers that are really effective in their literacy instruction are also getting development in what it could look like to support their campus or even train teachers in content. Some of the content from this first year will change for the second year, mostly because in the coming years, we're going to be focusing a lot on what those foundational practices look like. What we found to be most important for this first year is that we are taking significant time to address the new knowledge and skills, the new TEKS that are going to be rolled out. So in this first year, our focus is going to be much more on the knowledge and skills, the new language arts knowledge and skills that have been released, as well as focusing on how those standards are implemented in the classroom. In coming years, we're going to be focusing a lot more on how we can implement the curriculum or the standards as provided by the State Board of Education, but through a variety of curricular resources. So it is intended that content will change, and it is intended that we are also providing an opportunity for cohorts to continue and share this content with more than just the participants in the academies. Excellent. I know that there are certainly some questions that we've not been able to get to yet today. Thank you so very much for submitting those. We will certainly have responses posted on January 25th. Just as a reminder, this webinar was recorded and it will be posted on the TEA website. If you have colleagues that were not able to attend, please feel free to point them in that direction, as well as any individual who is not able to attend the webinar today and registered for it. I will be sharing the recording of the webinar with everyone that had registered. And finally, if there are additional questions that you think of, please do feel free to gather all of those questions. It is appreciated if one document is sent with many questions as opposed to many emails coming in with one question at a time. So if you want to work with colleagues and develop a master list of an ongoing log of questions over the course of the next week, please feel free to do that. Questions are due on Friday, January 18th. Responses to questions will be posted on the TE website a week later on January 25th. And then finally, the deadline for submitting applications will be on March 1st. With that, I just want to thank you again very much for your time today, and I look forward to engaging with you more as READ grantees in the future. Thank you very much.